David Blackman, and this is the Energy Impacts Podcast. I'm here today with my special guest, Ronald Stein, who is a terrific energy analyst and writer who's been doing it like me for quite some time. He's based in California. He writes for a project called the Energy Literacy, which is a tremendous educational product that tells the truth about what energy reality really is instead of the fantasies we see in most of the media every day. Ronald, how are you today?
Fantastic. Great day in California.
Well, good. It's a beautiful day in Texas too. We're getting a lot of rain, so I'm always happier when it's raining in Texas. So we don't have a problem with mudslides and stuff like that, right? um, So I just before we go into talking about what's going on in California and the energy sector there, want to give you a few minutes to talk about what you do, energy literacy, and the good work you're doing, and let folks know where they can get in touch with you and support your work.
Very good. Yeah, I focus on energy literacy. There's a big push right now for wind and solar energy to take over the world, but wind and solar only generate electricity. Wind and solar makes nothing for society. You know, electricity can charge my iPhone, but electricity cannot make my iPhone.
Yeah,
The interesting thing, if you go back to the 1900s, the average life expectancy was like 32 years of age. And since that time, there have been like 250 groundbreaking refining processes. Because one thing about crude oil is useless. It's black tar. We don't need that stuff. But these processes to break it down into derivatives that now makes all the products in our daily lives, life expectancy is exceeding 75 years of age. It's not because of crude oil, it's because of the products.
yeah,
I was interviewed recently on a New York TV station, and they said, "Hey, Ron, we understand you're pro oil." I said, "Time out. I'm not pro oil. I'm pro the products we get from oil. If there's another way to make the products, I'm all for it. But we've had 200 years to replace crude oil and been unable to do it. And so today, we have more than 6,000 products in our daily lives. It's all made from fossil fuels, the oil derivatives we get from crude oil. And we got, 50,000 jets, we got 50,000 merchant ships, none of which wind turbines and solar panels can make. And so it's
right,
that's the energy literacy is I guess the confusion in society is they misuse the word energy. They keep talking about wind and solar energy. I always refer to wind and solar electricity versus products.
right,
And that's the void that we're missing, because the one thing that people don't recognize is electricity came after oil, because everything that makes electricity, computers, the wires, the insulation, is all made from fossil fuels.
right.
I mean, you got wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, coal, natural gas. All six ways to generate electricity do not exist without oil. You get rid of oil, you get rid of electricity. Electric vehicles, 100% made with crude oil. The tires, the computers, the wires, the insulation. I mean, it's basically everything is oil based, and electricity can, operate the EV just like my iPhone. Electricity can,
Yeah,
make it work, but it can't make it. And that's the energy literacy I'm trying to inflict into society and have conversations. I'm all for getting rid of oil. What's your backup plan? That's the key thing. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can just Google me. I'm an author, columnist on America Out Loud News. My articles go out weekly and get reposted around the world and probably get exposed to 500,000 people around the world. And I co-author with articles with people in Japan and South Africa, and everybody's got the same situation.
yep, yeah. That's really true. It's all over the world, and speaking of your articles, you sent a wonderful piece over via email this week about situation with refineries, both domestically and internationally. That was co-authored with a fellow in Japan whose name is slipping my mind right now. Um,
Yoshiro,
yes,
Yoshiro Muronaka. Yes.
Right. That was fantastic. Talk about the situation with refining. I mean, I know most of my viewers have heard about what's happening in California with the Newsom policies that are kind of forcing the closure of a lot of the refineries there in California, at least two of them so far. And
Yes.
but this is bigger than just California. It's really a global issue that's developing now, isn't it?
It's a major global issue. It's becoming a national security issue too, especially like in California, because
Yeah.
the Phillips refinery in Southern California is closing this year, and Valero up north, in Northern California, is closing next year. The Valero refinery, one of the Air Force bases has a direct pipeline for its fuel from Valero. So when Valero closes, the interesting thing about California, we're an energy island. We're separated from the rest of the country by the Sierra Mountains because there are no
Right.
pipelines over the Sierra Mountains. So all the fuels for the 40 plus military airports and 9 international airports and the millions of cars and trucks we have, all that California fuel is made in California. And if it's not made in California, it's going to be made somewhere else.
Right, and this is like
And
the 5th largest economy on earth, right? Just in
yes,
California. I mean, this
yes,
is an enormous thing. This isn't Delaware or something. This is a big
exactly.
economic engine.
And China's got, I think, 8 new refineries coming on board within, I think, before 2030.
Yeah,
And if we can't make the fuel for our airports, military and international airports here, it's going to come from somewhere. We're going to be importing it from China. And David, that is scary to have China controlling our military airports and China controlling our
it's insane.
international flights. And yeah, that's a national security issue. And no one has stepped in.
It's
Um,
amazing how it just I don't want to interrupt, but I mean, it's amazing how little we are capable of learning from history because we had that exact same situation in the run up to World War II. We didn't have the existing ability to make our own airplane fuel. And
right.
so what the federal government had to do was subsidize oil companies to go into the swamps of South Louisiana, produce because they had the quality of crude oil necessary to make sustainable airplane fuel, and in the volumes that were needed, and build two major pipelines from Louisiana to the Northeast, and do it all within a year. And now we're facing a very similar kind of situation here in the U.S. as it relates to the ability to make jet fuel.
Yes.
It's history repeating itself all over again. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. What's really comical here with 2 refineries closing, Newsom is backtracking. He's basically backing off.
Of
And
course, yeah,
so what he's doing, he's allowing more drilling to take place. Well, folks, it's too late. You can drill for as much oil as you want. If you have no refineries to process it,
right.
what are you going to do with it?
And no
So
pipelines descended anywhere else, right, to be
yes,
refined.
exactly. Newsom has been for decades, he's been, against oil. But the interesting thing is, as we mentioned earlier, crude oil is useless. It's just black tar. If you want to get rid of oil, stop using the products that it makes.
Yeah,
It's like a restaurant. If you don't like the food, stop buying the food, the restaurant's going to close. Well, if you stop using the products, there'll be no reason to have crude oil processed, and the refineries would, close. So, but he doesn't have the guts to say, well, let's close all the hospitals, let's close all the airports. And so that would pretty much reduce the need for products. If you reduce need for products, the jobs would go away and there'd be less need for cars and trucks. And yeah, but yeah, he's not going to do that. So he just goes after the source, and he has no backup plan to replace it. I would love to have a conversation with Newsom and say, hey, I'm 100% in favor of getting rid of this goddamn crude oil, but what's your backup plan?
right.
We got, hospitals to support, we got, medical equipment, telecommunication, the space program. Wind and solar is not going to make anything to support that.
Does he? I mean, do you think he believes they can? I mean, do you think he really is so ignorant about all this subject matter that he really believes that
I
wind
don't know
and
if the
solar
term
could do that if you just let them and subsidize them enough?
I don't know if the term believe is right, but ignorant is right.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah,
let's have a conversation. If he's got a solution, hey, I'm all for it. But right now, it's just like he's just ignorant and
Yeah.
will not accept the realities and, you know, the sanitation systems, heating, ventilating. When you go into an airport, you go into a hospital, your office, a restaurant, try to identify one thing that was not made from oil. These things didn't exist before the
Right.
1900s.
Yeah.
And and he's under the impression, well, wind and solar, we're going to go net zero. Well, net zero is going to basically depopulate the world because if you get rid of oil and you get rid of these 6,000 products, yeah, hospitals are going to disappear and airports will disappear. And, you know, uh, take fertilizers. Fertilizers feed more than half the world
Right.
made from, wind and solar is not going to make fertilizers. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a real depopulating effort, and it's going to cost tremendously for the people that are left.
Yeah, on my Substack, the illustration I use at the top of my landing page is a meme that says, "You are the carbon they want to reduce," and I think that's really the ultimate end goal of the climate movement is a very significant depopulation of the planet, and by whatever means necessary.
Right. Well, the another interesting aspect is that 80% of the people on this planet are making less than $10 a day. That's more than
Yeah.
6 billion people. It's only the wealthy developed countries, i.e., the 2 billion people, that are using the refined products to enhance their life and their quality of life. But the other 6 billion people, like you say, they haven't joined the Industrial Revolution. The scary thing is, if they do, they're going to want to have an iPhone, go to the
Well, of
airport,
course.
and you're going to need a lot more refineries to process that useless crude oil into something usable.
Right.
And the tough part about refineries in developed countries is refineries they take a lot of land. They're like 1,000 or more acres because of all the tankage and for storing the different products. The refinery itself is a pretty small piece, but
Right.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
talking
but the
like a
tank
thousand
farms are
acres,
huge. Yeah.
right? And nobody wants a 1,000-acre refinery in their backyard. Yeah, so but they want the products, but get rid of the damn refinery.
Well, does this bill that Newsom just signed, that it does contemplate at least permitting all those thousands of wells in Kern County if anybody really does want to drill them? Does it do anything to help alleviate the negative impacts from his other policies on the refining sector and maybe raise some hope that either the Phillips or Valero refinery, someone else might come in and buy it? Is there any effort at all happening in Sacramento to do that?
No,
Yeah.
end of subject.
Yeah.
No, no. The situation is that refineries need oil to process, and California has pretty much, almost shut down the oil exploration in California. So back in before the oil embargo, we were about 95% independent. Between oil production in California and oil production in Alaska, it covered like 95% of the
Right.
needs of the California refineries. Because of the constant effort to overregulate the drilling, et cetera, that 5% is gone to be more than 60%. We import more than 60% of the oil to feed the refineries. And so all he's going to do is reduce the 60% of imports and, we'll be importing less oil. We've got less refineries to process it.
Right. And so, I mean, what do they think is going to happen to this new oil production in Kern County? Where do they think it's going to go? Are they just thinking it's going to get put on ships and sent somewhere else to be refined and then shipped back, or what?
No,
What is the
no.
plan? Is there any comprehensive plan like that?
I think the only plan is the fact he's lightening up on the oil industry to gain votes.
Well,
Beca-
do you anticipate oil and gas companies, let's say big independents or small independents or Exxon or Chevron, jumping in and going to California and asking for permits to drill all these wells. Who's going to drill the wells in Kern County?
A lot of independents drill the wells.
Yeah,
The problem is the refineries, they're a business,
right.
and they got refineries around the world. They're big players, and it's just a matter of economics. If it's too tough, a lot of businesses have left California for the same reason. You don't see the exposure to that, but yeah, I grew up. I started working at Fluor when I started my career.
Yeah,
The big engineering company like Fluor, Bechtel, Braun, Parsons, and most of those firms have left California for Texas
sure.
because it's just too
Just like
expensive to.
Chevron.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
in refinery, it's kind of difficult to move 1,000-acre facility, you know. And
Right.
so, if you just shut it down and build one in a different country or a different state, but they're a business and there's really no incentive for them to stay here.
Right. Right. People, I urge my audience to take a look at the history of Chevron. Go out and Google it. Chevron's presence in California. The decision by Chevron to move its headquarters from San Francisco to Houston last year is an enormous historic event.
Big
Southern
time. Yeah.
California, the Los Angeles area, just 50 years ago, 60 years ago, was covered up in wells operated by Chevron.
Mhm.
It was the centerpiece of Chevron's global business was California. And and people just I think very few people, and probably Newsom himself, understand that the huge cultural significance of that decision. It couldn't have been easy for Mike Wirth and the board to reach that decision. It had to be a really difficult and painful experience for them to do that. But that's how damaging and destructive the policies of this government have been on the oil sector in that state.
It's a lot of economics because
Yeah.
the thousands and thousands of people that they employ, they can employ them probably less expensively in a different state
Oh,
than
sure.
here.
Yeah.
This California's a great place to live, but it's a very expensive place to
It's a
live.
beautiful place too. It's just one of the most beautiful places on earth I just have ever been in my life.
When I was working at Fluor, like I said, I saw the transition when Fluor, Bechtel, Braun, Parsons, were basically leaving California. And I think it was in the early 90s that I was actually working at one of the, I was working at the Phillips Refinery when it's closing. I was actually working at that site. Um, and we, basically doing, major turnaround projects for them. And the, the fact that everybody was leaving, I was at Bechtel at the time, and when refinery manager came down one day and said, "These engineering firms are too expensive. Get them out of here." So I went back
Right.
to I went back to the Bechtel corporate office, and Bechtel says, That's it. That's a straw that's breaking the camel's back. We, Bechtel, we're moving to Texas." And so I, spending 20 years of my career with, Fluor and Bechtel, I went to my wife and says, "Hey, I've got two choices. I've been in project management, for 20 years, working at Fluor and Bechtel and Parsons, that type of thing. And I'm either going to have to go to Houston, where the market is, or go where they're building the projects, which is offshore. They weren't building anything in
Right.
California."
Right.
And my wife says, "Well, those are two unacceptable options." And so we started a staffing company to provide staff augmentation to the refineries because they have core staff, and when they do the shutdowns and turnaround projects, they have to augment their staff to do those projects. Then they get back to the core staff, and so we provided staff augmentation to the refineries, and we started staffing that in '95. And 30 years later, it turned out to be a great idea to stay in California. But we at PTS Advance had grown to be one of the nationwide leaders in staffing refineries
Yeah.
nationwide.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that's really scary, David, is the refineries that are left are big, they're huge.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And if they decide, like Valero and Phillips to close, that's going to be a major, major hit.
Doesn't
I mean,
Chevron
Valero,
still own one of the biggest refineries there
oh
in
yeah, Richmond,
California?
Richmond,
Richmond,
California.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, people need to understand that, Chevron's moving their headquarters. They haven't announced the shutdown of that refinery, but that's got to be something they're considering. It has to be. I don't have any insight into that, but when you look
Well,
at what's going on at that company, it almost has to be something they would consider.
you have to also look at the fact that these refineries are getting old
Yeah.
and older, and
Higher
it's
maintenance
getting
costs every year. And yeah, yeah,
right. The costs get more and more expensive to keep them
right.
current, and so yeah, economically, it's all a matter of economics. And if they can get a location at zero cost and build one in a different country, they'll do it
Sure.
because the land is less expensive. There's less environmental controls, less labor controls, and yeah, it's basically more cost effective to have a refinery in that location. So yeah, the good news is we have a great society, but as we get great, we don't want that dirty refinery near us.
Right. Well,
We want a clean operation. In fact, I always joke that Newsom only breathes California air. Anything outside the borders of California, he doesn't breathe that. And so, we get refined here, regulated out of business, but it's okay if they, make the products in China and pollute the air because he doesn't breathe that air.
right.
So,
Yeah, and but this is and you mentioned it, and I should have followed up earlier that this is really kind of a national security issue for the whole country, not just for California.
oh, big time, big time.
Yeah, and so talk about that because it's really important to people who, no matter where you live in the United States, this is an issue that really impacts you and your future potentially. That
Right.
what's going on out there.
There's currently, I believe it's like about 180 refineries that are, coming on board in the next several decades. They're pretty much all in Asia.
Right.
And, but, we're the developed countries. We're the one that need the products. We need the products, but we don't want the source. And you may want, your steak dinner, but you're forcing the steakhouse to close.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Exactly.
and yeah, that's a situation that people don't comprehend is, this idea of, net zero. But wind and solar make nothing. They just generate electricity. And when you think about it, everything that needs electricity is made from oil. The iPhone, the computers, the defibrillators, the X-ray machines,
Yeah.
the EVs, it's all made with oil. And they're saying at the same time they're speaking, we're going to get rid of oil and we're going to replace it with wind and solar. It's it's illogical. It doesn't make
No,
any
that's
sense.
true. It totally is, even in electricity, I mean, wind and solar really can't even adequately displace natural gas and coal generation in electricity, not on a 24/7 basis or anything remotely close to that. Even when they have battery backup, current battery technology discharges in 3 hours. So I mean, it's
And
you
all the
get
components for the battery are made from oil.
yes, of course, yes, of
That
course,
I would give everybody a an assignment. Like say, go to the airport, go to the hospital, try to identify one thing that was not made from oil. And electricity is not going to do it.
Yeah, it's
It-
funny. I was in the hospital with a heart issue a few years ago, and I actually had this conversation with one of my nurses. I can't remember how we got involved in the conversation, but she had no earthly idea, obviously. And this was, she'd been a nurse for 10, 12 years
right.
and had no understanding whatsoever that pretty much everything she used in her job was made from petroleum. And it was a real interesting conversation. I've often wondered if she ever had that conversation with any of her colleagues there at the hospital.
Well, that's what's going to take conversations. I guess another way to ask the question is, how is everything you're looking at? How are wind turbines going to make that? The plastic
Right.
gloves, and you know, reverse the question, instead of saying, what's not made from oil, how is wind and solar going to make what you're looking at?
Right, right. And I guess part of what they think is, well, we can make hydrogen with wind and solar, and that can replace some of it. I guess somehow. I don't really understand how that would work, but yeah, there's all these myths, and where Newsom's concerned, for example, his conceit was that if he just forced everybody to buy electric vehicles, then you wouldn't need all that oil in transportation in California, right? Without really considering any of the national impacts or the military impact.
Well,
But even that part of his agenda has kind of fallen apart, hadn't it?
exactly, because he's focusing on eliminating one product
Right.
from oil, gasoline.
Yeah.
He wants to get rid of gasoline. If he has EVs, he doesn't need gasoline. But he's not identifying what he's going to do about the other 5,999 products that come out of oil. So, yeah, you might get rid of gasoline, but, you know, it's like I say, you got to identify, how is the wind and solar going to make this stuff?
Yeah. And it can't do it, obviously. I mean, it's just such simplistic thought process that's happening. And of course, the president himself, we're doing this the day after President Trump delivered a pretty blunt speech, let's
Conversation.
put it that way, at the United Nations, and just told them that it's all a hoax and a scam, and they're destroying their economies at the altar of wind and solar, basically. And he's not wrong about that, but I'm not optimistic he changed anybody's minds at
He
the
might
UN.
not have changed their minds, but I would sure like to have some of the UN people have this conversation.
Oh yeah, totally.
How's wind and solar going to make this stuff that is allowed
Yeah,
we populated from 1 to 8 billion, and in less than 200 years. And it wasn't because of crude oil, it was because of those products.
right.
And we're a materialistic society today. Everything is product driven. Everything in your pants, your wallet, your iPhone, your watch, it's all made from oil. And wind and solar is, like I say, that's only electricity.
Well, I admire you for the work you do. We're bumping up against time here. We have been so lacking in our society in real education, real literacy about energy and all the myriad subjects underneath that overall heading, that I just really admire and respect what you do, and I wish there were 1,000 more Ronald Steins to interview on this show, right? Unfortunately, I know you feel the same way I do, often as kind of this lonely voice in the wilderness sometimes, but it feels like to me we're having an impact finally over the past few years, and things are beginning to at least return to some semblance of sanity that will hopefully continue to develop over the next decade or so. But before we go, I want to just remind folks where they can find you. I know one good way would just be to go Google Ronald Stein at Energy Literacy, but tell everybody where else, a more direct way to do it.
That's really the best way. And you would basically get contacts to America Out Loud News. That has the
Yeah,
3 books I've written and all the articles I've written. Like I say, my passion is to stimulate conversations. And that's the one thing we're lacking. And that's the one thing that Trump was addressing at the UN
yeah,
is, the fact they got their, head up their butt is one thing, but let's have a conversation.
yeah. And
This,
and for way too long, we have just stifled all that, and in fact, tried to cancel people who even suggested you dare have the conversation about
yes.
climate change and some of these topics. So, well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you. I hope the rest of your day goes well, and wish you good luck in the future. And keep sending over all those wonderful pieces.
We'll do that, David. You have a great day and catch you later.
All right, thank you, and thanks everybody for joining in to this episode of Energy Impacts. We'll be back soon with another episode for your enjoyment. Thank you.